I was supposed to be choosing flowers when I found my fiancé kissing my sister in the hotel hallway reserved for our wedding guests. One minute I was carrying a binder full of seating charts, ribbon samples, and invoices my planner kept insisting needed my signature before noon, and the next I was standing 10 feet away from the man I had promised my life to while his mouth moved against my sister's like he had forgotten the world existed beyond her body. His hand was splayed possessively over the curve of her waist. Her fingers were buried in his hair. The soft laugh that escaped her sounded intimate, practiced, triumphant. I stopped so suddenly that the binder slipped from my hands and hit the polished marble floor with a flat slap. Paper scattered around my shoes. Neither of them noticed at first. I had enough time to register everything in bright, cruel detail. The smear of mauve lipstick at the corner of Daniel's mouth, the strap of my sister's silk dress sliding off one shoulder, the engagement photo backdrop waiting in the ballroom beyond them with our initials framed in white roses. It was my wedding weekend, and they were kissing in my wedding hotel as if betrayal were just another item on the schedule. Then my sister turned her head and saw me. She did not jump back. She did not look ashamed. She did not cover her mouth or stammer out some frantic lie. She just looked at me with those dark, glittering eyes that had studied me all our lives, measured me, envied me, competed with me, and then, slowly, she smiled. It was a nervous smile, was apologetic. It was the kind of smile a conqueror wore while planting a flag in stolen ground. "We chose me," she said. The words struck harder than the scene itself. Maybe because they told me this was an accident. Was it a single drunken mistake, or a moment of weakness, or a lapse no one had intended to repeat? It was a war in her mind, and she was announcing victory. Daniel finally looked over his shoulder. The color drained from his face so fast that for half a second I thought he might faint. "Oh, Sophia," he said, as if saying my name gently could soften what I had just seen. "Listen to me." I could not hear anything except the thud of blood behind my ears. I stared at them and waited for reality to correct itself. My mind kept reaching for some alternative explanation, some angle that would turn this into a misunderstanding, because the truth standing in front of me was too ugly to fit inside the life I thought I lived. My sister adjusted her dress with leisurely grace. "We might as well tell her," she said. Daniel scrubbed a hand over his face. He looked less guilty than inconvenienced, like a man dragged into a difficult conversation he had hoped to postpone until after dessert. "Oh, I'm sorry," he whispered. "I never meant for you to find out like this. Not I am sorry I betrayed you. Not I am sorry I lied to you. Not I am sorry I slept with your sister while you planned our wedding. Only that I had found out in an inconvenient way." I laughed once, a thin, strange sound I barely recognized as mine. "How considerate." He flinched. "Oh, Sophia, please. It's complicated." "What is it?" my sister said, folding her arms. "He loves me." I looked at her then. Really looked. Elena had always been beautiful in a sharper way than I was, all angles and confidence and deliberate impact. Growing up, relatives compared us with the thoughtless cruelty families sometimes treated as honesty. I was the softer one, the sweeter one, the dependable one. Elena was the dramatic one, the dazzling one, the one people forgave, because she knew how to make her flaws look glamorous. I had spent years convincing myself that adulthood had finally moved us beyond that rivalry. Standing there with Daniel's lipstick on her mouth, she looked like every unkind childhood instinct turned flesh. Daniel stepped toward me. "Oh, I do care about you." I took a step back before he could touch me. My voice shook, and I hated that they could hear it. I hated that my humiliation had become public between the three of us before my heart had even caught up to what my eyes had seen. His expression softened into that familiar, patronizing sadness he used whenever he wanted credit for being gentle while doing something selfish. "Oh, I never wanted to hurt you." My hand closed around my engagement ring before I even realized I was reaching for it. It had been on my finger for 14 months. I remembered the night he slid it on, the candlelight reflecting in the diamond, the tears in my mother's eyes, the certainty in my chest when I said yes. Now it felt like a prop from a play I had mistaken for real life. I pulled it off. For the first time, both of them seemed unsettled. Daniel stared at the ring in my palm. Elena's confident smile faltered at the edges. Maybe they had expected tears, screaming, bargaining, dramatic collapse that would let them cast themselves as the guilty lovers while I played the hysterical abandoned woman. Instead, I bent down, lifted the fallen binder, gathered the pages with hands so numb I could barely feel them, and set the ring on top of the stack. "Oh, I hope you're very happy," I said. I did not wait for an answer. I walked away before my body remembered how to brake. The corridor blurred. I heard Daniel call my name behind me once, then again, but I kept moving past guests carrying garment bags and florists pushing carts of white peonies and hotel staff arranging champagne flutes for the rehearsal dinner. Nobody stopped me. Maybe my face warned them not to. Maybe some instinct made the world step aside for the newly ruined. I made it through the lobby and out the front doors before the first tear fell. The evening sun was lowering over the harbor, turning the water molten gold. Couples strolled along the promenade. A little girl ran past me holding a cluster of balloons. Somewhere nearby, a violinist was playing for tips, the melody sweet and aching and unbearable. I walked toward the wrought iron gate at the edge of the property. Then my knees gave out. I caught the bars with both hands and folded forward, every breath turning ragged. The pain hit all at once, vast and physical, like my chest had been split open with something blunt. I pressed my forehead to the cool iron and cried in ugly, choking gasps I had not made since I was a child. My wedding dress fitting was in 2 hours. Half the city believed I was days away from the happiest moment of my life. My fiancé was in love with my sister. I should have heard the car arrive. Instead, I noticed only when a sleek black sedan glided to a stop at the curb beside me, silent as a shadow. The driver got out first, came around, and opened the rear door with brisk deference. A polished black shoe touched the pavement. Then Alessandro Moretti unfolded from the back seat and stepped into the fading light. Everyone in the city knew who he was, even if they pretended not to. He moved through charity galas and political fundraisers, and exclusive clubs with the same calm authority he was rumored to wield in darker rooms, where fortunes and loyalties changed hands. Officially, he owned hotels, import businesses, shipping interests, and enough real estate to shape entire neighborhoods. Unofficially, people lowered their voices when they said his name. He was wealth and danger wrapped in immaculate tailoring, feared in public, obeyed in private, and impossible to ignore in any room he entered. He was also Daniel's older brother. Daniel was polished charm and inherited confidence. Alessandro was something far more dangerous because it was contained. Tall, broad-shouldered, and severe in a charcoal suit that looked cut directly onto him, he carried himself with a discipline that made everybody around him seem clumsy. His dark hair was brushed back from a face too composed to reveal much, and too striking to forget. I had met him perhaps a dozen times in 3 years, always in crowded rooms, always at family occasions or business events where his presence subtly changed the temperature. He had never been anything but courteous to me. Distant, yes. Observant. Controlled. But never unkind. Now he was standing beside me while I cried at the gate of my ruined wedding weekend. He took in my face, the tear-streaked mascara, the abandoned binder in my hands, and whatever he saw there tightened something in his expression. "Oh, I know what happened," he said. I let out a broken laugh. "Did you come to admire the damage?" And his gaze sharpened. "No." One word, quiet and absolute. "I came because my brother betrayed the wrong woman." I stared at him through blurred vision, with such an unexpected answer that for a second I forgot to breathe. Not because it was comforting, exactly, but because it sounded like anger on my behalf. And I had not realized until that moment how lonely it felt to be hurt in a way no one else seemed prepared to name properly. I wiped at my face with the back of my hand. "You don't have to do this." "Do what?" Pretend to care. Something unreadable flickered across his features, there and gone too quickly for me to interpret. "I am not pretending." The violinist music drifted across the courtyard. Cars passed along the waterfront. Breeze stirred the lace sleeves of my blouse and cooled the tears on my cheeks. Alessandro glanced once toward the hotel entrance, as if measuring whether Daniel might follow, then returned his attention to me. "We don't owe my family anything," he said. "Not your composure, not your forgiveness, and certainly not your silence." I looked down at the ring sitting on top of the wedding papers in my binder. My fingers curled over it instinctively, shielding it from view. "Love is generous," I said, because sarcasm was easier than gratitude. "It isn't generosity." His voice remained level. "It's fact. Maybe under any other circumstance I would have distrusted him. Maybe I should have. He was a Moretti, after all, and I had just discovered how much damage one Moretti man could do while claiming he never meant it. But grief has a strange way of sharpening instinct instead of dulling it. Everything about Daniel had suddenly begun to feel false. Everything about Alessandro, standing in the dusk and making no move to touch me or hurry me or manipulate the moment, felt painfully real. "I can call a car," I said. though my phone was buried somewhere in my bag, and my hands were shaking too hard to dial anything. Well, you could. I waited for him to argue. But he didn't. He just stood there, patient and impossible to read, giving me space I had not asked for but desperately needed. I swallowed. Why are you really here? His eyes met mine. Because when I learned what happened, I did not want you leaving this place alone. No flourish, no cleverness. Just the simple truth. It disarmed me more than comfort would have. My apartment is 20 minutes away, I said softly. Oh, I know. Of course he did. Alessandro was the kind of man who knew everything worth knowing. He tilted his head toward the open car door. Let me take you home, Sophia. I hesitated. Every warning I had ever absorbed about powerful men and complicated families flickered through my mind. Yet the hotel behind me suddenly felt hostile, contaminated by what I had witnessed in its corridors. The thought of waiting at the curb while strangers stared at my face, my ruined makeup, my abandoned wedding binder, made my skin crawl, so I nodded. The driver took the binder from my hands without comment and placed it carefully on the front seat. Alessandro waited until I slid into the back before following. The leather smelled faintly of cedar and expensive cologne. The door closed with a muted thud that shut the world outside. For the first minute, I could do nothing except stare at my hands in my lap. My engagement ring was still in my palm, warm from my skin. Without thinking, I curled my fingers tighter around it until the metal bit into me. Give it to me, Alessandro said. I looked up, startled. What? A flash of defensiveness rose in me. Why? Oh. So you stop hurting yourself with it. I had not even realized I was digging the stone into my flesh. I opened my hand. Pale indentation marked the center of my palm. He extended his own, broad and steady between us. For one foolish second, I almost refused out of sheer pride. Then I placed the ring on his skin. He closed his fingers around it, not triumphantly, not possessively, simply taking the sharp thing away. The car moved through the city with the smooth inevitability of money and power. We passed the waterfront, old stone buildings glowing under street lamps, restaurants spilling light and laughter onto sidewalks. People out there were beginning their evenings, making plans, choosing wine, worrying about ordinary things. I felt as if I had slipped out of the world they occupied and into one where sound was muffled and time distorted. Alessandro did not push conversation. He made one brief call in Italian, his voice low and clipped, then put his phone away. I turned toward the window and let the lights smear by while grief and shock tangled inside me so tightly I could no longer tell them apart. After a while he said, "The wedding arrangements will be handled." I gave a brittle laugh. Handled how? Or the hotel will be compensated. Vendors will be contacted. Anything already paid for will be recovered where possible. My staff can coordinate with your planner if you want them to. I turned to him in disbelief. Why would you do that? Because you should not spend tonight discussing floral deposits. The sheer practicality of the answer nearly made me cry again. Daniel would have called it overreacting if I broke down over flower invoices. Alessandro was quietly removing the burden before I had even considered how heavy it would become tomorrow. Well, you don't have to clean up his mess, I said. His jaw shifted once. I know. There was something in that tone that made me think of old anger, older than tonight. Older maybe than Daniel's betrayal. I wanted to ask what history sat between the brothers, what coldness had been forged there, but exhaustion dragged at me, and curiosity felt too fragile to hold. Instead, I said, I didn't know anyone else knew, or he found out this afternoon. How? He was silent for a beat. I make it my business to notice when people around me start behaving like fools. That answer would have sounded arrogant from anyone else. From him, it sounded almost weary. I leaned back against the seat. Did Daniel know you knew? No. A small, mean part of me found unexpected comfort in that. Daniel, for once, did not control the timing of the truth. We reached my apartment building just as the sky turned fully dark. Alessandro got out first and walked me to the entrance, the driver following with my binder. I lived in a restored brick building on a quiet tree-lined street, 3 floors above a bakery that scented the mornings with butter and cinnamon. I had chosen it because it felt warm and ordinary and safely my own. Tonight the windows glowed like a refuge I was no longer sure I deserved. At the door I turned to him, suddenly awkward. Thank you for the ride. He handed the binder back, then held out my ring between thumb and forefinger. I stared at it. I did not want it. I did not want the proof of his proposal, or my faith, or my stupidity. Throw it away, I said. Alessandro's gaze searched mine, as if confirming I meant it. Then he slid the ring into his pocket. As you wish, blind. I nodded once and reached for the door. Sofia. I looked back. He withdrew a simple black card from his inner jacket pocket and offered it to me. The card carried only his name and a number embossed in silver. Nothing else. He did not need anything else. Oh, if you ever need someone standing beside you, he said. Call me. The words were so strange and formal and unexpectedly gentle that for a second they loosened something in my chest. I took the card because refusing felt impossible. Why? He studied me in the soft porch light, because not everyone who comes from the same family is made of the same things. Then he stepped back, gave a slight nod, and left. I watched the black sedan disappear at the end of the street before I let myself inside. The next morning I woke with swollen eyes and a pounding head to find 2 garment bags from the bridal boutique leaning against my bedroom wall like witnesses. I ordered coffee, canceled my dress fitting, and spent 6 straight hours answering logistics. My planner cried before quickly switching into professional efficiency. The florist offered condolences and asked whether I wanted to redirect the arrangements to a hospital or keep them for a private event. The hotel manager sounded far too practiced, which made me wonder how many collapsed weddings he had managed before mine. Every call required me to say some version of the truth out loud. The wedding is off. No, there won't be a rescheduled date. Yes, you can release the room block. By late afternoon, my voice had gone hoarse. The city, however, had found its appetite. Word spread faster than I had imagined possible. 2 different friends texted me screenshots of anonymous posts hinting at a scandal between a prominent family and a near marriage derailed by infidelity. Nobody used names, but anyone who knew our circles could guess. My maid of honor came over with soup, wine, and murder in her eyes on my behalf. She had been my friend since university, the kind of woman who loved with full force and hated injustice almost as much as she hated bad men. "Oh, I will key his car," Camila said, pacing my kitchen in a silk scarf and righteous fury. "You will not. Oh, I will hire someone to key his car." Despite everything, a laugh escaped me. "Please don't commit property crimes because my fiancé has no moral compass." "Former fiancé," she corrected. "Trash wrapped in a tuxedo." Right. She set a container of soup in front of me and narrowed her eyes. "Have you heard from the brother?" I nearly dropped my spoon. "What brother?" I wanted to do that innocent face. "Alessandro drove you home, didn't he? My cousin saw his car outside your building." News traveled obscenely fast in our city. "Yes," I said carefully. "Oh, he offered me a ride." Camila leaned across the table. And nothing. He was kind. That's all." She made a humming sound that suggested she believed kindness from Alessandro Moretti was not an ordinary category. "I've met him twice. He stares like he knows where bodies are buried." "That is not comforting." "Well, I didn't say it was. I'm saying if a man like that decides to stand next to you, nobody will dare breathe wrong in your direction." She paused. "Did it feel like he pitied you?" I thought about the car, the quiet, the practical way he removed problems instead of commenting on pain, the look in his eyes when I accused him of pretending. "No," I admitted. "It did." Camila studied me for a long second. "Interesting. For 3 days I stayed mostly inside. I canceled appointments, ignored half my messages, and answered only the people who genuinely loved me. My mother came by once and managed to turn Elena into both villain and victim within the same conversation. My father sent flowers and a brief note that said, "Whatever you need, I'm here," which was touching, except he had not actually called. Daniel sent emails after realizing his number was blocked. I deleted them unread. Elena posted more photographs, careful ones, angles that suggested happiness without quite confirming the new relationship. The comments below were a swamp of speculation. The first time I left the apartment, it was to buy milk because I refused to let heartbreak make me depend on delivery apps for survival. The cashier looked at me too long. 2 women outside the store went silent when I passed. Maybe they recognized me. Maybe I imagined it. Betrayal does that. It convinces you the whole world has been invited to watch. 2 nights later, my cousin Marcella's engagement dinner arrived, the kind of family event I normally would have attended with a wrapped gift, good heels, and easy laughter. I almost sent regrets. Then I thought of Elena's message, of Daniel asking me not to make a public scene, whispers already painting me as the unstable one who could not handle being left. Something inside me hardened. I would not vanish just because they wanted a cleaner stage. I spent an hour getting ready. Not because I felt beautiful, but because armor sometimes looks like lipstick. I wore a fitted black dress with a square neckline and pearl earrings my grandmother had given me. When I saw myself in the mirror, I looked older somehow. Sharper around the eyes. Less willing to trust softness. The dinner was held at an old villa outside the city, all climbing roses and honey-colored stone, with a terrace overlooking vineyards striped silver under moonlight. My family loved places that looked like romance made permanent. I arrived alone, handed over my gift, kissed Marcella's cheek, and immediately felt the weight of attention settle over the room like dust. Pity has a texture. Curiosity has one too. I felt both. A few relatives rushed over with theatrical sympathy. Others pretended nothing unusual had happened and asked whether I wanted sparkling or still water. My mother squeezed my hand so hard it almost hurt. "Oh, you're being very brave," she whispered, which nearly sent me right back to the car. Then I saw Daniel. He stood near the champagne tower in a midnight blue suit that made him look exactly as he always had. Handsome, polished, perfectly at ease under admiration. Elena stood beside him in rose satin, one hand looped through his arm, her hair falling in dark waves over her shoulders. If she felt even a flicker of shame, she hid it beautifully. They looked like a couple already accustomed to being watched together. I tasted metal in my mouth. Camilla, who had arrived separately and immediately glued herself to my side, muttered, "Or say the word, and I will spill red wine on both of them." "Tempting," I said. We lasted 17 minutes before Daniel approached. He did it carefully, as if crossing toward a nervous animal. "Oh, Sophia," he said. "Can we talk?" No, Elena came with him anyway because of course she did. She tilted her head and gave me a pitying smile so insincere it was almost artful. "You came alone." I looked at her over the rim of my glass, clearly. Daniel lowered his voice. "I don't want tonight to be uncomfortable, or that makes one of us." He sighed, as if I were being difficult on purpose. "There's no reason to be hostile." Camilla let out an incredulous sound, but I touched her wrist lightly. I wanted this moment clear. I wanted to remember exactly who he was when the mask finally slipped. Elena's fingers tightened on his sleeve. Maybe it's just hard for her to accept the truth. I stared at my sister. "And what truth is that?" Her smile sharpened. "But not everything is meant to be yours." The old wound was suddenly visible beneath everything. Years of comparison, competition, or certainty that love was a prize that had been awarded unfairly. My chest ached with something almost larger than anger. "You think this is about winning?" I asked. "For once," she said softly. "I don't have to think." Daniel stepped in before I could answer. "Enough, Sophia. I'm sorry for how this happened, but dragging it out helps no one. Maybe this is better. You need time to calm down." There it was, not remorse. Condescension. I felt the heat rise in my face. Around us, conversation had thinned. People were pretending not to watch while absolutely watching. Then the room changed. It happened first as a subtle shift in silence, then as a ripple of awareness moving outward from the entrance. Heads turned. Voices died. Even the waiters seemed to pause in the spaces between their steps. I looked toward the arched doorway and saw Alessandro walking in. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, the top button of his black shirt undone. The simplicity only emphasized the force of him. He carried no visible emotion, yet the atmosphere bent around his presence anyway. Men who prided themselves on influence straightened. Women who knew better than to chase danger still looked. There was something about him that made performance feel childish. He did not need attention. It organized itself around him naturally. Daniel went still beside me. I felt it, a tiny freeze in his posture, a younger brother's instinctive alarm. Alessandro's gaze traveled the room once and found me immediately. He came straight across the terrace. Not fast. not aggressively. Simply with the kind of certainty that made space appear where there had been none. Guests shifted aside. My aunt stopped mid-sentence. Marcella's fiancé lowered his champagne glass. Elena's painted confidence flickered for the first time all evening. Alessandro stopped at my side and looked only at me, up close. I noticed the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, and the scent of cedar and smoke that clung to him, subtle but unmistakably his. "Good evening," he said, as if this were any ordinary social call. "Good evening," I managed. He held out his hand, that was all. No demand, no explanation, no possessive claim. An offered choice in front of a room that suddenly seemed to inhale as one. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Somewhere to my left," Daniel said. "What are you doing here?" Alessandro did not even glance at him. He waited for me. I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and steady. He tucked my hand against the bend of his arm with deliberate care, then finally turned his head toward his brother. "Oh, she won't be standing alone anymore," he said. The sentence landed like a judge's gavel. Nobody challenged him, nobody dared. Daniel's face drained of color. Elena's mouth parted in genuine disbelief. Around us, silence swelled thick as velvet. I should have felt triumphant. Maybe part of me did. Some bruised and furious corner relieved to see them rattled. But what moved through me most strongly was something else. Something quieter and far more dangerous. Safety. Because Alessandro's hand on mine did not feel theatrical. It did not feel like a game. Felt like a line being drawn around me that no cruelty in the room would cross without consequence. Daniel recovered first, though only barely. "This is funny." Alessandro's expression remained composed, and it's fortunate I'm not joking. "You don't know what's going on here." Juan. That earned him a glance at last, cool enough to frost glass. "On the contrary." Elena found her voice. "Oh, she doesn't need your charity." "No," Alessandro said. "She needs respect. Since the two of you seem unable to offer it, I will." My breath caught, not because of the words alone, but because he spoke them without raising his voice. Power had never sounded so controlled. Camila made a tiny choking noise that might have been awe. Daniel's jaw flexed. "You were embarrassing everyone." Alessandro's mouth curved very slightly, with no warmth at all. "You did that yourself." There was nothing left for Daniel to say that would not humiliate him further. He knew it. I knew it. The room knew it. After one last furious look at me, he turned and walked away. Elena, forced to follow or be stranded in the wreckage alone. Conversation did not resume immediately. Returned in hesitant threads, low and charged, as if everyone needed a moment to believe what they had just witnessed. Alessandro remained beside me until the noise level softened, then angled his body enough to shield me from the room without crowding me. "Do you want to leave?" he asked. The directness of the question nearly undid me. No one else that week had asked what I wanted. They had asked what happened, what I planned to do, whether I was all right, how furious I was, whether I might reconsider, but not what I wanted in the immediate human sense. "Yes," I said. He nodded once. "Then we'd all leave." He did not consult my family. He did not linger to smooth social discomfort. He simply guided me toward the exit with a courtesy that made obedience feel like relief. Camilla squeezed my free hand as we passed and mouthed, "Call me later," eyes wide as fireworks. The car stopped at a light. Reflected neon moved over the line of his jaw. I realized suddenly that I had never been alone with him this long before. In family gatherings he stayed on the edge of rooms, watching more than speaking, collecting information with those unreadable eyes. Women flirted with him. Men tried to impress him. Children approached him carefully, and almost always left with some quiet gesture of kindness he seemed to hope nobody would notice. He had always felt like a story other people told in lowered voices. Sitting beside him now, I felt the unnerving difference between rumor and presence. "What are you offering then?" I asked. The light changed. The car moved. "Solution," he said. I laughed softly. "To heartbreak?" "To heartbreak? To gossip. To the kind of opportunism that follows scandal." He turned slightly toward me. "Your former fiancé has already begun shaping a narrative that flatters him. Your sister will help him. Families talk. Investors' wives talk. Committee boards talk. Your name will keep passing through rooms as if you are a cautionary tale rather than an injured party. He was right, and I hated that he was right. I can survive gossip. I know you can. His voice was calm. The question is why you should have to, when there is a way to stop it. A strange stillness came over me. What way? He held my gaze. Marry me. Words. The words settled between us with impossible weight. I stared at him, certain for one ridiculous second that I had misheard. What? Marry me. My laugh this time was pure disbelief. You cannot be serious. You. I'm entirely serious. I turned toward the window, then back to him, as if the city outside might provide a more sensible translation. Your brother just left me for my sister. I am aware. And your proposed solution is that I marry his older brother? Yes. Or... That is insane. Strategic, he corrected. I actually gaped at him. Well, you cannot possibly think I'm in the mental state to discuss strategic marriage. Then don't discuss it tonight. He was maddeningly composed. Think about it. I searched his face for a joke, cruelty, even manipulation. I found none. Only that same contained certainty that had brought him to the villa and drawn a protective boundary around me in front of half our social circle. Why would you do that to yourself? I asked. A pause. Then, it would not be a hardship. The answer was so dry, I nearly laughed again despite the absurdity. That is an explanation. No, Jonathan, explain. He looked at me for a long moment. A public alignment with me ends speculation. No one will dare paint you as unstable, rejected, or pathetic when I have chosen to stand beside you. My brother loses the ability to control the story. Your sister loses the victory she imagines she has won. Your future is no longer discussed as a ruin. It becomes a decision. I should have been offended by how clinical he made it sound. Instead, a guilty, furious part of me thrilled at the image of Elena's face. Daniel's, the entire city's. I stepped out beside Alessandro Moretti not as the abandoned fiancé but as the woman he had chosen. That frightened me. Oh. You make it sound like a business merger, I said. In some ways it would begin as one. Will begin? He did not answer that. The car stopped outside my building again. He made no move to get out this time. Neither did I. Would it be real? I asked finally. Only if you wanted it to become real, he said. I would not touch you without your consent. I would not control your movements. You would have your own rooms if you preferred them, your own accounts, your own schedule, your own name if you wish to keep it. I am proposing protection, not ownership. The care with which he said it went through me like a current. Why me? The question emerged before I could stop it. His gaze rested on my face, unreadable and somehow too steady. Because I know exactly who you are. My pulse stumbled. That doesn't answer anything. It answers enough for tonight. He opened the door on his side and stepped out, signaling that the conversation was over whether I liked it or not. By the time he came around to mine, I was too stunned to protest. He walked me to the building entrance and paused there under the warm spill of the porch light. Think about it, he said again. Most people bring flowers before proposing. One corner of his mouth moved. Flowers seemed inappropriate under the circumstances. I laughed before I could help it, and the sound startled both of us. Then his expression gentled into something I felt rather than understood. Get some sleep, Sophia. He left before I could ask the 100 questions crowding my mind. I did not sleep. I lay awake until dawn, replaying every second of the last week, like my brain believed it could edit pain through repetition. Daniel's mouth on Elena's smile. Alessandro at the gate. Alessandro on the terrace. Marry me. By morning I was too exhausted to separate outrage from temptation. That evening I took Alessandro's card from the drawer where I had hidden it and called the number. He answered on the second ring. Sophia. No hello. No surprise. As if he had known I would eventually call. I want to discuss your insane proposal, I said. There was the smallest pause then. Good. Are you free for dinner? 2 hours later, I was seated in a private room at one of the city's most discreet restaurants, trying not to notice that the staff seemed to anticipate Alessandro's preferences before he spoke. He arrived exactly on time, wearing a black suit and a silver watch I recognized from family events. Something about the familiarity of that detail unsettled me more than the expensive surroundings. He waited until wine was poured, and the door closed before saying, "How was your day?" I blinked. You asked me here to discuss marriage. When I asked how your day was, I almost said fine out of reflex, then stopped. Terrible. I nodded as if that were both expected and acceptable. Did Daniel bother you? I set my glass down. How did you know he came by? What? A faint, unrepentant shift of one shoulder. I assumed. You assume very accurately. I practice. Despite myself, I smiled. It vanished quickly, but he noticed. Oh yes, I said. He came by. Would he upset you? That would imply he had any power left to surprise me. I leaned back. He accused me of overreacting, also implied I was using you for revenge. And are you? Question was so direct that I answered before caution could intervene. Partly. He held my gaze. Honesty is useful. Not proud of it, or you've been humiliated publicly. Pride is allowed to misbehave for a while. Pride is allowed to misbehave for a while. A laugh escaped me, softer this time. That's a dangerous philosophy. Only in the wrong hands. What? The waiter returned with appetizers and disappeared again. For several minutes we ate in surprising ease. Alessandro asked about practical things first. Whether the wedding cancellations were fully handled, whether Daniel had continued contacting me, whether my family was pressuring reconciliation. He listened without interrupting, and when he did speak, it was never to minimize, only to clarify, predict, or quietly remove a problem. By the time our main course arrived, my shoulders had dropped without permission. Finally, I set down my fork and said, "All right. Explain this marriage as if I am a rational woman considering an irrational offer." The candlelight caught at the planes of his face as he folded his hands. We would gain immediate protection from gossip, social isolation, and any attempts by Daniel or Elena to paint you as unstable or difficult. No one will risk insulting my wife openly. Your financial independence remains your own. Any legal arrangements will favor your security. The marriage can be as private or public as you choose within reason. At any point after 1 year you want out, I will not contest an annulment or divorce, whichever proves cleaner. I stared. We've thought this through. Yes. Yes. How long? A pause. Long enough. My pulse stirred oddly. I chose not to examine why. And what do you gain? His answer came smoothly. A wife. That is not specific. When is sufficient? No, it isn't. You are one of the most powerful men in this city. If you wanted a convenient marriage, you could have your choice of heiresses, socialites, the Matza daughters, and women who would probably volunteer for sainthood if it meant your last name. His expression remained calm. I am not asking them. Why? This time the pause was longer. Because I want you. He climbed my neck so quickly it annoyed me. You barely know me. Something sharpened in his eyes. That is where you are mistaken. I sat very still. He continued, voice even. I know you send anonymous donations to the children's clinic every December because you dislike public gratitude. I know you hate champagne, but drink it at events because you dislike inconveniencing hosts. I know you carry mints in every handbag because your father once told you that preparedness is elegance. I know you cut the crusts off sandwiches when you are anxious, prefer peonies in spring and white ranunculus in winter, and reread the same 3 novels when you are sick. My fork slipped from my fingers onto the plate with a soft metallic clink. He watched me without triumph, only with a strange, restrained openness that felt more intimate than if he had touched me. "Oh, I know," he said quietly. That you apologize when other people hurt you, and that you smile when you are furious because you were taught anger makes women ugly. I know you are kinder than most people deserve and far stronger than they realize. My throat tightened. How do you know any of that? Or, he looked down once, then back at me. Because I noticed. Not because I investigated. Not because I had you watched. Because I noticed. The distinction mattered instantly and completely. I could not seem to draw a full breath. For how long? His gaze held mine, longer than would make this conversation simpler. The room felt suddenly smaller, warmer, filled with a dangerous honesty I had not expected to encounter tonight. I should have been alarmed. Instead, I felt exposed in a way that was terrifying precisely because it was not unwelcome. Why didn't you ever say anything? Well, you were engaged to my brother. The simplicity of that answer carried more restraint than any dramatic confession could have. He had stayed silent not because he felt nothing, but because he had felt enough to honor a boundary even when Daniel had not. I looked down at the candle between us, flame wavering gently. So this isn't just strategy. No, Brennan. Then what is it? His voice was low now. It is the only way I can stand beside you openly without waiting for a world that no longer exists. Emotion rose swift and destabilizing. I reached for water mostly to occupy my hands. You realize I'm a terrible risk right now. I don't care. I don't angry. I know. I know. I might say yes for the wrong reasons. Then say yes, he said. He said. And let the reasons change. I stared at him, my heart beating hard enough to hurt. It was an outrageous sentence. A reckless sentence. A sentence no cautious, sensible woman should trust. Yet nothing in his face asked me to be easy, grateful, or instantly healed. He was not promising a fairy tale. He was offering shelter strong enough to survive my broken pieces. What if I can love you? I whispered. His expression did not shift. Then I will still make sure you are safe. No demand, no negotiation, just that. I thought of Daniel saying our life had become predictable. I thought of Elena smiling over stolen affection. I thought of the way Alessandro had held out his hand on the terrace and let me decide in front of everyone whether to take it. For the first time in days, my choice felt like power instead of aftermath. Yes, I heard myself say. He went very still. The word hung between us, small and irreversible. I had expected triumph, perhaps relief. Instead, what crossed his face was so controlled it almost escaped me. A softening around the eyes, the briefest exhale, as if some private tension inside him had loosened after being held too long. Yes, he repeated. I nodded. Yes, I'll marry you. He closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, then opened them. All right. That was all. No dramatic speech, no demand for immediate logistics, just 2 words spoken with the gravity of a vow he had already made to himself. I laughed shakily. You are remarkably calm for a man who just proposed a tactical marriage to his brother's ex-fiancée. On the contrary, he said, and for the first time that night I saw unmistakable heat in his gaze. I am exercising historic restraint. My breath caught, then scattered. I looked down quickly, fighting a smile that felt far too alive for a woman whose heart had been broken less than a week earlier. We signed papers 3 days later at City Hall with only Camilla, Alessandro's lawyer, and an elderly clerk as witnesses. My mother nearly fainted when I told her. My father went silent for a full minute before asking whether I was certain. Elena sent 9 unanswered messages. Daniel called from 3 different numbers. Alessandro handled all of it with terrifying efficiency. There was no white dress, no orchestra, no floral arch, no promises made in front of rows of applauding guests. I wore a cream suit and pearl studs. Alessandro wore black. When the clerk asked if I took him as my husband, my voice was steady. When she asked him the same, he looked directly at me and said yes, as if he had been waiting years to use that word. Outside, cameras somehow appeared despite the discretion of the ceremony. Alessandro's security moved swiftly, but not before a few photographs were taken. Me on the courthouse steps with the most feared man in the city, his hand firm at my waist, my expression stunned and unreadable beneath the flash of surprise. By evening, those images were everywhere gossip traveled. The headlines, where they existed, were delightfully frantic. Jilted bride marries ex-fiancé's brother. Moretti family scandal deepens. Power move or love story. For once, I did not feel crushed by public attention. I felt hidden inside his choice. We moved into his home that afternoon, though home was an inadequate word for the sprawling stone villa tucked behind iron gates at the edge of the city. It was less a house than a private world. Terraces overlooking cypress trees, high windows framed by heavy linen, a library that smelled of leather and old paper, staff who moved discreetly through their tasks as if invisibility were part of their training. I should have felt swallowed by it. Instead, the first thing Alessandro did upon leading me upstairs was open a set of double doors at the east wing. "These rooms are yours," he said. "Not this room. These rooms." A bedroom in pale cream and walnut, a sitting room lined with bookshelves, a marble bathroom flooded with sunlight, a dressing room already fitted with empty space. Fresh flowers stood on the windowsill, white ranunculus, exactly my winter favorite, even though it was early spring and peonies would have been easier. I turned slowly, taking it in. "You did this today?" What? No. I faced him. "When then?" His gaze rested on the flowers for a beat. "Earlier." "Of course. Long enough." My chest tightened in that dangerous way again. "You expected me to say yes." "No," he said. "Oh, I hoped you might." Hope sounded stranger on him than any threat would have. He showed me the rest of the house only if I asked. My office, if I wanted one, the kitchen, though the staff handled most meals, the garden paths, the library, the guest suites, the west wing, where his rooms were. He never once implied mine should automatically become his. By the end of the tour I was exhausted, emotionally wrung out by the ceremony, the cameras, the sheer unreality of my new last name. At my door he paused. "There is no expectation tonight," he said quietly. "Or any night after, unless you wish it. You need me, call. You need privacy, no one will disturb you." I searched his face. "Do you always speak like a contract drafted by a gentleman?" Blind, one corner of his mouth lifted. "Only when I am trying not to frighten my wife." I should have been frightened, maybe some part of me was, but stronger than fear was the overwhelming relief of being treated as if my boundaries mattered at a moment when I felt scraped raw. Marriage did not turn into a cage. It turned into the first quiet place I had ever been loved. Alessandro never treated me like a possession, only like a woman worth listening to. He remembered my coffee, my flowers, the songs I hummed when I cooked, the way storms made me sleep with the curtains open. Slowly, my anger stopped being the loudest thing inside me. One winter night, when moonlight glazed conservatory glass, I finally asked when he had started caring. He touched my hand and said, "Long before my brother knew your worth." I told him I had married him to survive what Daniel had done. Then I smiled through tears and told him the truth. I didn't choose him because betrayal pushed me there. I chose him because he showed me what love was supposed to feel like and made me believe I was safe enough to love again for real.